Salam all, that means peace. How are you guys doing? I hope you all are doing well. Welcome back. So this is the third part of our series, the orbit of Eritrea's agony, which that's the source we're using. The title of the video is Eritrea, the sad story, a history and a perspective, because it's the history of Eritrea and a perspective to go along with it. So we're using the text, which is the article, The Historical Orbit of Eritrea's Agony by Dr. Alemseged Abbay. So far, he has taken us through quite an interesting journey that I did not know of, that I had not taken in my life prior to reading this article. We spoke about the Treaty of Wuchale, which included, which entailed the sale of Eritrea to Italy for arms and money. So, and then we talked about the Italian influence on Italy in the on the Italian influence on Eritrea negatively. We just kind of touched it. We barely even scratched the surface. You can say we arrived at the surface and then we kind of observed it. We still haven't really scratched it or gotten deep into it. But that's what we're going to be doing, because there is much to discuss regarding this topic. So without further ado, I'm going to try to keep these videos. I'll try to keep them about maybe 22 minutes long. We'll do the best we can. About 22 minutes seems fair. So Asmara became what was known as Piccola Roma, Little Rome. We ended yesterday with where Eritrea was known, where Mussolini decreed that Eritrea should blossom with at least an imported rose, meaning good things need to come from outside Eritrea, because Eritrea it's one of the world's less promising deserts. That's what it is. That's how the Italians viewed it. So they wanted to use Eritrea as a gateway to get to the highlands, to the lush green lamlam, the green highlands, the green where everything is fertile, lush. That's what they wanted. That's what they were after. They were not after Eritrea, mainland Eritrea anyway, the main part of Eritrea anyway. They were not after it. Not to say that Eritrea doesn't have any. Eritrea has highlands, and Eritrea does have fertile ground, but they used it as a gateway. The source for that Eritrea needed an imported rose is it's the British administration in Eritrea and Somalia, 1941 to 1943. That's the name of the, I don't know if it's an article or a book. I'm guessing it's an article by Gander Dower. That's the source that's cited. Let's continue reading. So before anything, I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. I praise and I glorify him as he ought to be praised and glorified. Let's start. The appearance of Piccola Roma in an improbable part of Africa continued to surprise the British, who took trusteeship of Eritrea following the defeat of Italy in 1941. The British took over when the Italians were defeated in World War II. After World War II, when they were defeated, the British took trusteeship of Eritrea. So they they took control. And the whole thing was, what are we going to do with this place? How do we dispose, not in that, how do we throw this place away? What happens to this place? What do we do with it? And that's what eventually led to the federation with Ethiopia. Anyway, the British, they had Eritrea for 11 years, I believe. So, anyway, so it continued to surprise the British, the appearance of Picciola Roma in an improbable part of Africa. Continued to surprise the British, who took trusteeship of Eritrea following the defeat of Italy in 1941. So the British are the ones who kicked Italy out, not the Eritreans. It was the British who kicked them out. What is known as Eritrea, no Eritreans did not drive any force out, only Ethiopia. To be honest with you, there was assistance. I mean, they did get foreign assistance from places like Arab countries, but they also had help from, there's an article you can look up, they had help from the CIA. You can look that up. Isaias Afwerki and his relationship with the CIA. So, wondering, meaning the British, wondering how this European city of broad boulevards, super cinemas, super fascist buildings, cafes, shops, two-way streets, and a first-class hotel ever came to get there. They were wondering, how did Asmara become this Picciola Roma? All the things that I mentioned, and this is Asmara's geography currently. All old Italian relics. All of the buildings that I see, including churches, the buildings that I see, churches, you know, a church is a place of worship, so I'm not going, let's not talk about those. But other buildings, they're all Italian. I know some people that when they see pictures of Asmara, they say, "What happened? It looks so old. It looks like it's not poorly maintained." And I tell them, because it is. It's as you're saying. Broad boulevards, super cinemas, super fascist buildings, cafes, shops, two-way streets, and a first-class hotel. How did it ever come to get there? The British were wondering. The British maintained the imported European culture, but started giving natives access to Western education. I believe Wolde Jesus in his text includes Eritrea, root causes of war and refugees. It may, I don't think it's included in this text, but it was that the Italian slogan, I don't know if it was actually mentioned, it may have been, was to keep the Eritrean brain empty and the belly full. The British slogan was the opposite, the contrary. It was the opposite. Was the British keep the Eritrean belly empty, but keep their brains full. So the British maintained the imported European culture, but started giving natives access to Western education. All the while, some 100,000 natives were crowded in Quartiere Indigeno, native quarter, in an indigenous quarter, eking out their age-old life and enjoying none of la dolce vita. They enjoyed none of the good life that the Italians were enjoying. The natives did not enjoy any of that. That colonialism brought into their region. They were crowded into their native Abyssinian quarters. He calls it Abyssinian. They were crowded into their native Abyssinian quarters because before that area was known as Abyssinia. That's what it was known as in history. Al-Habasha in Arabic, Habasha in Tigrinya, maybe other languages, Habasha, Abasha. That's what that area was known as, the area. Now, if you want to talk about who's Habasha and who's not, meaning who is a real Habashi and who is, meaning who is real Habasha and who's not, Habashawi, or, you know, so that's another story. But this is talking about the area. So they were crowded into their native Abyssinian quarters, such as the fabled Gaza Enda Abba Shaul, which lacked modern toilet systems and sufficient clean drinking water to meet basic needs. No modern toilets and no clean drinking water to meet the basic needs. Furthermore, natives could not promenade the sidewalks of the main streets of Picholaroma. Natives could not walk on those sidewalks. You can't enjoy this area. It's not for you. Apartheid. They were unwelcome in Italian cafes, and they would be trespassing if they were in Italian residential neighborhoods. They would be trespassing. For those of you, by the way, who are pro-Isayas, Higdefawiyan, Higdef people, Sha'biya, I've noticed there's Sha'biya who are anti-Isayas, but I don't know. I mean, how are you anti-Isayas? You're still Sha'biya. So, Higdef people, Isayas Afwerki, who you guys consider to be someone who is resistant to colonial powers and all this talk of nonsense. What was he doing inviting Ameldeo Guilet? You guys know Ameldeo Guilet? Ameldeo Guilet was known as the Devil Commander. You can look him up. Ameldeo, if I'm not mistaken. Ameldeo. A, M as in Mary. E, L as in Larry. D as in Delta. E as in Edward. O. Ameldeo or Ameldeo. Might be Ameldeo. Ameldeo Guilet. G-U-I-L-L as in Larry. E-T as in Tom. As in Thomas. Ameldeo Guilet or Ameldeo Guilet, one of the two. This man was known as the Devil Commander. This man was an employee. He was a kind of mercenary, I believe. And if you read about Hamid Idris Awate, I'll tell you straight up right now, I don't respect Hamid Idris Awate, and I'm not the only Eritrean who doesn't respect him. Why? Because Hamid Idris Awate was a killer of the Kunama people. Maybe he committed other crimes too, but I know him to have been someone who killed people from the Kunama. And there are a group of Kunama who don't like Hamid Idris Awate. But Sammy, you're Muslim, you should be one of those who likes Hamid Idris. So what about if I'm Muslim or not? Right is right and wrong is wrong. I don't care. Justice is justice. I don't care if he fired the first shots. I don't care. Satan could have fired the first shots for all I care. What do I care? Hamid Idris Awate was following Ameldeo Guilet around. He was on the payroll of the Italians. Hamid Idris Awate. This guy, he was a mercenary. That's basically what he was. Why the ELF recruited him? Probably because he had knowledge of how to use weapons and war, because he was a former Italian askari. He was part of the askari, the old Italian soldiers. So that's why. We may need more time. That's why. So I'm against Hamid Idris Awate. You want me to share articles with you about it? There's a lot. I'm not the only Eritrean who's against Eritrean. I don't want to go by, the slave name. Eritrea is the slave name. That's the slave name. I'm not the only one who has origins north of the Merab River who is against Awate, regardless of his position in the revolution. Who cares? I'm among those who curse Awate. Kill innocent people and then you fire a few shots against the oppressor, and then we're supposed to glorify you? When you kill your own people? If you kill anyone who's innocent, it's a crime. You can't do that. I don't care about the tribal explanation. Well, there were issues with between the tribes. Who cares? So what? Doesn't give you the right to kill people. The color line did not allow them, Eritreans, did not allow them to use the same windows in post offices or seats in buses as the settlers. Unlike the Italian children who received a good education, native children had access to little or no education. Little or no education. We're going over the history, the story. Whatever substandard schools existed were meant to introduce children to the fascist doctrine of glorifying the second duce and encouraging boys to become Piccolo Askari del Duce, meaning the second Duce's little soldiers. That's, I believe, I don't know if it's Duce or Ducci, I don't know. It's talking about, I believe, the leader, cursed leader Mussolini, the other devil. So their job, the kids of Eritrea, your job is to glorify this guy. Glorify this Ducci guy. Glorify him. And be his little soldiers. Even the Medici, biracial. Medici children, recognized by their Italian fathers, had no access to Italian schools. Even if you're mixed, you don't have access to the Italian schools. Only in 1944 did the British rule make the decision to admit half-breeds on the same basis as Italian children. Consequently, there's a bracket, in brackets, sick is written, which normally corrects some mistake made by not the author, but the one who the author cited. I don't know what the mistake is, but in any case, I'm just letting you guys know. The British made the decision to admit half-breeds on the same basis as Italian children. The British are the ones who allowed that. Consequently, because of lack of education, the British could not find trained natives to run Eritrea. Because of lack of education, the British could not find trained natives, Eritreans, to run the country, to run Eritrea. Therefore, they had to retain the existing fascist personnel and bring trained colonial subjects from Kenya, Uganda, Tanganyika, Sudan, Rhodesia, Egypt, and Palestine to operate their state machinery in Asmara. They had to bring people from all these countries to operate the state machinery in Asmara. The source for this is also British administration in Eritrea and Somalia, 1941 to 1943, Gander Dower. Kenya, Uganda, Tanganyika, Sudan, Rhodesia, Egypt, and Palestine to operate the state machinery in Eritrea because nobody was trained in Eritrea. They had to bring people from all these countries to come in. I don't know what Tanganyika is, or I don't know what that country is. If anyone is watching who's from there, forgive me. Rhodesia, I believe, is Zimbabwe. But Tanganyika, I don't know where that is. Please forgive me for not knowing. I will look it up after. I may have looked it up before at least once, but sorry for not looking it up again, or sorry for not knowing where that is. So let's do one more paragraph and we'll end here. Socialization between natives and settlers was negligible. Miscegenation was forbidden, as observed by Lillian Shodler. Miscegenation, I believe, is mixing with the locals. So Italians and locals mixing. You're not supposed to, if I'm not mistaken, get with their women, with the native women. They did, but you're not supposed to do that. In my understanding, that's what miscegenation is. Miscegenation, even if it's just, I think even if it's just mere sexual relations, of course, that's a big sin among the Muslims and the Orthodox Christians. But that's what I believe it also refers to, any kind of relation. Miscegenation was forbidden, as observed by Lillian Shodler, a friend of the U.S. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. Yet, the young Italian men found the Abyssinian women irresistible despite Mussolini's preaching of the gospel of race purity. How do you feel when you think about foreign men coming after your women? I don't care what tribe, because as an East African, with people around me who are fellow East Africans, who we're close neighbors with, how do you feel as an East African thinking about foreigners coming after your women? Think about that. In Arabic, there's a word, because in Islam, there's a concept called ghira. Ghira is protective jealousy. It's a kind of protective jealousy. What it means is that basically you don't like people. So if you have women folk, your mother, your daughter, your sister, anyone, you don't want people to, men, or anyone really, you don't want people to violate them in any way, even to look at them in the wrong way. You have this anger, this disappointment. You're protecting, you're out of protection and out of ghira. It's a protective kind of jealousy. It's not a jealousy, it's more of like a protective kind of thing. But you know what I mean. You can have ghira for your land. You can have ghira for anything, anything really, for your religion. You know, where someone violates something and you have this sense of disappointment. This is natural and this is acceptable. The one who doesn't have that protective jealousy for his women folk is no different than a pimp, because the pimp, he sends out women to go and do bad things, right? And so, but he doesn't care about their ghira. It's not in his interest. He's not interested. Same thing for the one. So you don't care. You know, I know this is a thing of the past, but think about this. This should burn you. Yet the young Italian men found the Abyssinian women irresistible despite Mussolini's preaching of the gospel of race purity. Mussolini was trying to push this race purity thing. Good, keep that. We want that. Don't touch our women. Even his own son, Vittorio Mussolini, who was a member of the bombing staff during the Italo-Ethiopian War of 1935 to 1936, stated that the Abyssinian women possessed sex appeal, and most Italians kept native mistresses. Thus, when Mussolini decided to resettle 250,000 families in Ethiopia, to resettle Italians, 250,000 families in Ethiopia, it was feared that miscegenation was going to lead to I believe he may be talking about resettling, I think maybe resettling the natives. 250,000 families in Ethiopia, it was feared that miscegenation was going to lead to a considerable influx of African blood into Italy, whose net effect was dreaded to be not negligible for the future of Europe. He was afraid that people are going to mix and we're going to have African blood coming into Italy. Thus, as unwelcome byproducts of the institution of Madamismo, the Medici were not spared the scourge of racism. So, as unwelcome byproducts of the institution of Madamismo, I think, was taking mistresses. That institution, if I'm not mistaken, the Medici, the mixed children, they were not spared the scourge of racism. They faced racism. I will mention a few things before we get finished here. A lot of Eritreans go to Italy for refuge. I don't know how many people from Eritrea live there. Somehow the colonizers, the colonized end up where the colonizers are. That's one thing. The other thing is that Italian is still a language taught in Eritrea. There are still Italian schools. They still have, I don't know if they still have streets named, I don't know if they have streets. I don't know if they have streets named after with Italian names. They have, maybe they have schools and these things named after Italians. They still have kept Italian influence after what I just mentioned to you. Where is the dignity and where is the honor? We'll talk more about that on the next episode, God willing. It's good to see you again, even though I don't see you literally. It's good to be with you. Take care. Keep safe. I'll see you on the next episode of Eritrea, the Sad Story, going by Dr. Alemseged Abbay's The Orbit of Eritrea's Agony. That's the article. You can look it up online if you want to see for yourself. Thanks for watching. Peace be with you.